He kissed my forehead and said, "Text me when you get there." I smiled, waved him off, and watched his car disappear down our street, completely unaware that I would never see him the same way again. That was the moment I still believed my boyfriend when he told me he was going to his sister's place for the weekend. She'd just gone through a bad breakup, he said. She needed emotional support, family time, space. I didn't question it. Why would I? We'd been together long enough that trust felt automatic, like breathing, quiet, unconscious. He left Friday morning with a small suitcase, and that cologne, the one he never wore unless something mattered. I noticed it. I remember thinking, that's a little odd. Then I brushed the thought aside. I didn't follow him. I didn't snoop through his phone. I didn't interrogate him or demand proof. Instead, I found out by accident. That afternoon, I logged into our shared phone plan. Something mundane, checking data usage, wondering why the bill was higher than usual. A boring, adult task. The kind that shouldn't change your life. And then I saw it. A hotel confirmation notification, forwarded to his phone. A couple's resort, 3 hours away, Friday through Sunday. Romantic package included. 2 guests. The reservation wasn't even under his name. It was under my business partner's. I sat there, frozen, staring at my laptop screen while my pulse thudded so loudly it felt like it was echoing in the room. My fingers went cold. My chest tightened. Every detail from the last 24 hours rearranged itself in my head like shards of glass snapping into place. The cologne, the suitcase, the casual goodbye. My first instinct was chaos. Drive there, bang on the door, scream, cry, demand answers, make them look at what they'd done to me. But even in that shock, another voice cut through, calm, sharp, devastatingly clear. If you confront them privately, they'll lie. If you explode, you'll be painted as unstable. If you let them control the narrative, you lose. So I did something else, something quieter, something irreversible. I took screenshots, every detail, names, dates, the room type, the romantic getaway label spelled out in clean, unforgiving text. Then I opened our old college group chat. 15 people, friends, spouses, partners, the people who'd watched us build our lives side by side. I typed one message. Just facts. No insults, no emotion. And then I hit send. I turned off my phone, lay down in bed, and closed my eyes. I slept better that night than I had in months. Because I already knew, before the calls, before the messages, before the fallout, that some truths don't need defending. They just need to be seen. Before everything fell apart, our life looked solid from the outside, the kind of relationship people pointed to as proof that stability still existed. I was 31, running a small but steadily growing home renovation business. It wasn't flashy, but it was real. 4 years earlier, my business partner and I had started from nothing. Long days, borrowed tools, and a shared belief that if we worked hard enough, it would pay off. We built it piece by piece into something legitimate. 6 employees, consistent clients, and a reputation we were proud of. I trusted her completely. Not just with contracts or money, but with my future. When you build something from the ground up with someone, that trust becomes structural. You don't question it because questioning it would mean doubting the foundation you stand on every day. My business partner was married. Her husband had been around since the early days, quiet, polite, supportive in a way that didn't demand attention. They had built a life together. From the outside, they looked steady, normal, safe. There was never a reason for me to believe otherwise. I met my boyfriend through mutual friends about 2.5 years ago. It wasn't dramatic or cinematic, just an easy introduction that turned into longer conversations, then laughter, then something comfortable enough to keep choosing. He was attentive, emotionally available, the kind of man who made you feel secure without having to promise anything out loud. We moved in together after a year. It didn't feel rushed. It felt earned. We talked through logistics like adults, finances, schedules, responsibilities. He worked in pharmaceutical sales, traveled sometimes, made good money. I respected his ambition. We split everything evenly. Rent, utilities, groceries, no dependency, no imbalance, just 2 people sharing a life. Or at least that's what I believed. Because my business partner and her husband were part of our wider friend group, our lives overlapped naturally. Dinners, group chats, celebrations, nothing ever felt inappropriate. No moments that made me uncomfortable, no behavior that raised alarms. If anything, it all felt normal. That's the part that still unsettles me. Because betrayal doesn't usually announce itself. It hides inside routine, inside shared jokes and familiar faces, inside the assumption that the people closest to you wouldn't be capable of dismantling your life quietly. In the months leading up to that weekend, work had intensified. Growth does that. More responsibility, longer hours. I came home tired some nights, distracted others. But I never checked out. I never disappeared. I never stopped choosing my relationship. If my boyfriend felt neglected, he never said it plainly. Not in a way that invited an honest conversation. No real warnings. No, I'm unhappy. No, we need to talk. Just silence where communication should have been. And if lines were being crossed behind my back, they were crossed carefully. Which is why, when he told me he was going to his sister's place for the weekend, I didn't hesitate. I encouraged it. Told him to give her a hug from me, to take care of her, to enjoy the time. Trust makes you generous like that. It makes you assume the best. It makes you overlook small inconsistencies. It makes you believe that the people woven into your daily life would never put you in a position where the truth has to ambush you through something as mundane as a phone bill. At the time, I thought I was building something lasting. 2 careers, 1 home, shared plans that didn't need to be spoken out loud to feel real. I didn't know that underneath all of it, the structure I trusted most was already cracking. And I had no idea how close I was to learning that the most dangerous betrayals don't come from strangers. They come from people who already know exactly where everything is. The first cracks didn't arrive as explosions. They slipped in quietly, disguised as coincidence, small enough to ignore if you wanted to keep believing everything was fine. At first, it was timing. My boyfriend started mentioning my business partner more often than usual, not overtly, not in a way that set off alarms right away, just little comments woven into conversation. She said the client meeting ran long. She mentioned you've been working too hard. She thinks we should all grab dinner sometime. I didn't question it. Why would I? They already knew each other. Our lives overlapped. The business demanded long hours, and my partner was deeply involved in the day-to-day operations. It made sense that conversations crossed paths. Still, something about it felt off. Then there were the messages. I'd glance over while he was on his phone and notice the screen tilt slightly away from me. Not dramatically, just enough. If I asked who he was texting, he'd answer easily. Too easily. Work stuff. Your partner had a question. Group chat nonsense. Nothing I could challenge without sounding paranoid. And my business partner, she changed too. She used to be direct, practical, focused. Lately, she lingered. Stayed later than necessary. Found reasons to swing by when meetings were already over. When I talked about weekend plans with my boyfriend, she listened a little too closely. Asked follow-up questions that felt unnecessary. Where are you two headed? How long will you be gone? Oh, that sounds nice. I told myself I was imagining things. Stress does that. Long hours blur judgment. I didn't want to be the woman who sees betrayal in shadows. There were moments, small, sharp ones, that stuck with me anyway. Once, I walked into the office unexpectedly and found them standing closer than professional distance allowed. Not touching, just aligned. Their conversation stopped the second I entered. Another time, my boyfriend mentioned a detail about a client dispute that I hadn't discussed with him yet. When I asked how he knew, he shrugged. She told me, "You've been so busy, I figured it was fine." It wasn't fine, but I swallowed that feeling too. Because nothing was explicit. Nothing crossed a line I could point to and say, "There, that's it." At home, the atmosphere shifted. He was still affectionate, still attentive, but selectively. Like he was checking boxes instead of being present. His compliments felt rehearsed. His apologies came too fast before I'd even expressed frustration. "You've been under a lot of pressure lately," he said one night, brushing my hair back from my face. "I worry about you," another time. "You don't really rest anymore." Concern can be comforting. It can also be a way to redirect guilt. Meanwhile, my business partner started deflecting responsibility in subtle ways. Small mistakes blamed on miscommunication. Delays explained vaguely. When I asked direct questions, she'd smile and reassure me everything was under control. "You trust me, right?" she said once, half laughing. I did. That was the problem. The turning point, the moment I should have listened to my instincts, came a week before the trip. We were all at a casual get-together with friends. Drinks on the table, laughter filling the space. Normalcy performing perfectly. I watched them interact from across the room. Nothing inappropriate, no touching, No secret smiles, just an ease that felt practiced, like they'd already had conversations I wasn't part of, like there was a shared context I didn't have access to. When my boyfriend caught my eye, he smiled, warm, familiar. When my business partner noticed me watching, she raised her glass slightly, like everything was fine. I smiled back. Because that's what you do when you don't yet know you're being positioned as the last person to find out. By the time he told me he was going to his sister's for the weekend, the groundwork had already been laid. The secrecy, the emotional outsourcing, the careful overlap between work and personal life. I just didn't know it yet. I thought I was standing on solid ground. In reality, the betrayal had already started rooting itself quietly, waiting for the moment it could no longer stay hidden. Last Thursday evening felt painfully ordinary. We were standing in the kitchen, the low hum of the refrigerator filling the pauses between our sentences. He leaned against the counter, phone in hand, already half somewhere else. I was rinsing a mug, listening with only part of my attention, thinking about a client call I had to take the next morning. "I'm going to my sister's this weekend," he said casually. "She's not doing great after the breakup, just needs some support." I didn't stop what I was doing. "Okay," I said. "Give her a hug from me." That was it. No hesitation, no follow-up questions, no suspicion. If anything, I felt proud of us for being the kind of couple that didn't need to interrogate each other's plans. He left early Friday morning, a small suitcase by the door, that familiar cologne, the one he only wore on special occasions. He kissed my cheek, told me to have a good day, promised to call later. The door closed behind him, and I went back to my routine. By Friday afternoon, the only thing on my mind was money, specifically our phone bill. It had been creeping up for months, and I wanted to see where the extra usage was coming from. We'd joined one of those family plans when we moved in together to save a little cash. I handled the account since it was under my name. I logged in without thinking, clicked through usage, scrolled absent-mindedly, and then I saw it. A notification preview tied to his number, a forwarded message, a hotel confirmation. I stared at the screen, my brain refusing to process what my eyes were seeing. I clicked it open, my hands suddenly unsteady. A couple's resort, 3 hours away, Friday through Sunday, 2 guests, a romantic package. The reservation name made my stomach drop. My business partner. For a full 10 minutes, I didn't move. I didn't breathe properly. I just sat there, staring at the laptop, replaying the last 24 hours in my head like a slow-motion accident. The suitcase, the cologne, the sisters' breakup. My first instinct was raw and physical. Drive there, confront them, demand explanations, make noise loud enough to drown out the betrayal. But then I imagined it. Tears, excuses, gaslighting dressed up as misunderstandings. And me, painted as emotional, dramatic, unstable. No, I wanted something cleaner. I took screenshots, every detail. The dates, the room type, the package description. Her name attached to it all, clear and undeniable. Then I opened our college group chat. 15 people, friends we'd known for years, spouses, partners, people who'd celebrated promotions and weddings together. My boyfriend was in it, my business partner was in it, her husband was in it too. I typed one message. No commentary, no accusations. Just the truth. "Hey everyone, interesting discovery. He told me he was at his sister's this weekend for emotional support. Turns out he's at a couple's resort, booked under my business partner's name. Just thought everyone should know who they're really dealing with." I attached the screenshots. I hit send. Then I turned off my phone. I went to bed and slept deeply, shockingly deeply, because for the first time since I'd logged into that account, I wasn't carrying the truth alone. Saturday morning, chaos greeted me. When I turned my phone back on around 9, the screen lit up like a warning signal. Missed calls stacked on top of each other. Text messages flooding in faster than I could read them. My boyfriend had called me 17 times between midnight and 3 a.m. My business partner had called 8 times. Her husband had called 4. The group chat had detonated overnight. Messages blurred together as I scrolled. Is this real? Holy hell. I had dinner with them last week. Around 1 a.m., my boyfriend had finally tried damage control. "This is a misunderstanding. I can explain everything. Why would you do this publicly instead of talking to me? You're ruining my reputation over nothing." My business partner stayed silent. Her husband didn't. At 2:47 a.m., his message landed like a final nail. "Thank you for posting this. I had no idea. I'm done." 4 sentences. Enough to end a marriage. I opened my private messages next. My boyfriend had sent a wall of text. Excuses dressed up as introspection. Yes, I'm here. Yes, it's with her. But it's not what you think. Nothing physical happened. We just needed space. You've been so busy lately. I felt neglected. She listened to me. I read it twice. Then I replied with one sentence. The reservation says romantic couples package, 1 king bed. You told me you were at your sister's. I didn't destroy anything. Don't come back to the apartment. He called immediately. I declined. Minutes later, my business partner texted, We need to talk. This is getting out of hand. Meet me at the office. I answered calmly. I'll be there Monday. Bring a lawyer. The silence after I sent that last message was heavier than the chaos before it. Once the phone stopped vibrating, once the call slowed to nothing, reality settled in. Not as a dramatic collapse, but as a cold, methodical shift, like something inside me had clicked into a different gear. I didn't cry right away. That surprised me. Instead, I felt focused, alert. My body moved before my emotions caught up, like it knew what had to be done, even if my heart hadn't processed it yet. Saturday afternoon, I went back to the apartment. Not to destroy anything, not to scream into empty rooms, not to make a mess that could be used against me later. I packed his things, carefully, neatly, shirts folded, shoes paired, toiletries sealed in bags. I boxed everything and stacked it in the spare room. It felt transactional, like closing out an account that no longer existed. Then I changed the locks. The apartment was in my name. He contributed to rent, yes, but legally, the space was mine. I double-checked. I didn't want ambiguity. I didn't want leverage handed back to someone who had already lied with ease. Morally, I felt clear. By Sunday morning, the emotional backlash arrived in waves. His mother called. I let it go to voicemail the first time, picked up the second. How dare you, she said immediately. No greeting, no hesitation. Whatever happened between you two should have stayed private. You humiliated him. You humiliated her. You're vindictive and petty, and you'll regret this. I listened, calm, still. Your son lied to me, I said evenly. He went to a couple's resort with my business partner and let me believe he was comforting his sister. I didn't invent the embarrassment. I shared what already happened. She hung up. No goodbye. Sunday evening, his sister reached out. Her tone was completely different. I just want you to know, she wrote. He didn't come here. I had no idea he was using me as cover. I'm really sorry. That message landed harder than the yelling, because it confirmed what I already knew and removed the last place my doubt could hide. I thanked her for telling the truth. By Monday morning, the shock had sharpened into resolve. I arrived at the office at exactly 8 a.m. My business partner was already there. She looked terrible, pale, hollow, like she hadn't slept in days. I noted it without satisfaction. This wasn't about revenge. This was about containment. Before she could speak, I raised my hand. Stop, I said. I don't care about excuses. I care about the business. She tried anyway. This was a mistake, she said quickly. Things haven't been great at home. And with him, it just happened. I never meant... I don't care, I repeated. You and I own this company 50-50. I want you out. She blinked, then laughed. You can't just kick me out, she said. We're equal partners. If anything, we'd have to sell the whole company and split it. Fine, I said. Let's sell. Her expression changed instantly. Wait, what? You'd destroy 4 years of work over this? You destroyed it, I said calmly, when you decided to take my boyfriend to a couple's resort while I trusted you with half my livelihood. She shifted strategies. My husband is leaving me, she said. I might lose my family. Can we please pause this? I'll buy you out. Just give me time to figure out financing. I considered it carefully. You have 60 days, I said. Match a fair valuation or we list the business. My lawyer will draft the agreement. She nodded slowly. 60 days, she said. And for the record, I added, you're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry it's public. I left the office without looking back. That night, alone in the apartment, the weight finally hit me. 2.5 years. Trust. Shared routines. A future I'd assumed was stable. Gone. Not with a scream, but with clarity. And once clarity arrives, there's no going back. The weeks that followed didn't bring relief. They brought pressure. It came from every direction at once, like the fallout had decided to test how firm my boundaries really were. My ex-boyfriend started first. At first, it was apologies, long, rambling messages sent late at night, full of reflection and self-pity. I made a mistake. It wasn't physical. I was confused. You've been so busy lately. I never stopped loving you. I didn't respond. When silence didn't work, he escalated. He showed up at the apartment one evening, knocking for nearly 20 minutes. I watched him through the peephole, his shoulders slumped, his hands shaking as he wiped his face, rehearsing something I would never hear. I didn't open the door. Eventually, he slid a letter underneath it. 4 pages, carefully written. Every paragraph a new excuse dressed up as accountability. I boxed it with the rest of his things. Then came the intermediaries. 2 people I'd considered mutual friends reached out to help. Their messages were careful, balanced, almost scripted. They acknowledged that what he'd done was wrong, but suggested that I had handled it poorly. You didn't have to make it public. You embarrassed him. You could have talked it out privately. I responded with facts. He lied about where he was going. He went to a couple's resort with my business partner who was married. I found out through a phone bill. I shared exactly what happened. One friend blocked me. The other replied, "I get it. I'm staying out of it." On the business side, things got uglier. My former partner couldn't secure financing to buy me out. Her husband filed for divorce. Their assets were frozen pending proceedings, which meant any attempt to move money stalled immediately. She came to me again, this time desperate. "I can't make this work," she admitted. "If we sell, everything collapses. Let me sell my half instead. At a discount." The audacity of it almost made me laugh. The company had been valued at roughly $380,000. Her share was worth $190,000. "I'll give you $140," I said evenly. "You sign a non-compete and exit immediately." She tried to negotiate. I leaned forward. "The offer drops by $5,000 every week you delay." She signed on day 3. I took out a loan to cover the buyout. It was uncomfortable, but manageable. Clean, final. The employees were relieved. One of them pulled me aside quietly and told me what I hadn't seen. Late arrivals, extended client meetings, work she'd been avoiding for months. I owned the business outright now. As for my ex, his situation unraveled fast. Word traveled. Someone in our friend group worked in his industry. Pharmaceutical sales is built on trust and reputation, and scandal spreads quickly when it's documented. He wasn't fired. He was encouraged to resign. By the end of the month, he'd moved back in with his parents. His mother posted a passive-aggressive rant on Facebook about people who tear others down instead of building them up. Strangers tagged me in it 3 times. I ignored it. The group cleaned house. My ex was out. My former partner was out. Her husband stayed. Ironically, he and I ended up grabbing coffee one afternoon. "Thank you," he said quietly. I suspected something, but she kept telling me I was paranoid, that I was imagining things. "You weren't," I told him. He nodded. "You gave me proof." I didn't know whether to apologize or accept the thanks. "Both can exist," I said. For a moment, the chaos slowed, but the emotional cost hadn't peaked yet. Because the worst pressure doesn't come when the truth comes out. It comes when the people who lied realize you're serious about never letting them back in. The outside noise eventually faded. The calls slowed. The messages stopped. The chaos that had filled every hour of my days finally loosened its grip. And that's when the quiet became dangerous. Because when there's no one left to respond to, no crisis left to manage, you're forced to sit with what actually happened. That was the point I broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, but in the small private ways no one prepares you for. I'd come home after 12-hour days, unlock the apartment, and feel the absence immediately. His shoes weren't by the door anymore. No hum of his voice from the other room. The space felt hollow. Too clean, too intentional, like a hotel room you're only meant to sleep in. One night, I stood in the kitchen holding a mug I didn't remember choosing and realized my hands were shaking. I set it down before I dropped it. Sleep became inconsistent. I'd fall asleep exhausted, then wake up hours later with my heart racing, replaying conversations that no longer mattered. Words I should have said. Moments I'd misread. Versions of the past where I caught the lie sooner. At work, I functioned. That was the scariest part. From the outside, everything looked like it was improving. The business was stable. Decisions were clearer. Meetings were efficient. I wasn't carrying anyone else's incompetence or secrets anymore. But inside, something had fractured. 2.5 years doesn't vanish just because you make the right choices. It lingers in routines, in reflexes, in the empty space on the couch where someone used to sit. Some nights I wondered if I'd been too harsh, if I should have handled it quietly, if exposing the truth made me cruel instead of strong, if the fallout was too big for a mistake that, according to him, wasn't physical. Then I remembered the reservation, the dates, the romantic package, the lies stacked neatly on top of each other, and the guilt would drain away. Still, grief doesn't operate on logic. It ambushes you in moments of stillness, in grocery store aisles, in songs you didn't realize had meaning attached to them, in the sudden instinct to reach for your phone, then remembering there's no one left to text. I started therapy, Not because I felt weak, but because I didn't want this to harden me into someone I didn't recognize. I talked about trust, about how it erodes quietly when it's broken by people who had access to your ordinary life, about how betrayal from strangers hurts less than betrayal from someone who knew where you kept your spare keys. The therapist asked me once, "What scares you the most right now?" The answer came without hesitation. Believing the wrong person again. That fear sat heavy in my chest. Because while I knew I'd done the right thing, professionally, ethically, logically, I hadn't yet learned how to sit with the emotional wreckage without trying to minimize it. I missed the version of myself who trusted without calculation. I missed the ease. I missed the illusion of safety. And in the quietest hours of the night, when the apartment felt too large and my thoughts too loud, I wondered if choosing the truth meant I'd also chosen loneliness, at least for a while. That was my lowest point. Not the discovery, not the confrontation, not the public fallout, but the moment I realized that doing the right thing doesn't spare you from grief. It just gives you the strength to carry it. The turning point didn't arrive with a confrontation. It arrived with clarity. 3 weeks after everything blew up, my ex-boyfriend tried again. One last, carefully crafted attempt to rewrite the story. Different number, same voice. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he said when I answered, against my better judgment. His tone was softer than before, measured, like he'd practiced it. "I know I hurt you. I know I messed up. But I think you're holding on to a version of what happened that isn't fair to either of us." I closed my eyes. "Nothing physical happened," he continued quickly, as if repetition might transform a lie into truth. "We were just talking, connecting. You were always working. I felt invisible. She listened. That's all it was." There it was again. The reframing, the minimization, the attempt to turn deliberate choices into unfortunate weather. I let him finish. Then I said calmly, "You booked a couple's resort with a romantic package. You lied about where you were going. You used your sister as cover. That wasn't confusion. That was planning." Silence stretched on the line. "You're punishing me for being human," he said finally. "No," I replied. "I'm protecting myself from someone who thinks being human excuses deception." He tried one last angle. "I'm starting therapy," he said. "Communication workshops. I'm willing to do couples counseling, whatever it takes." That was the moment something settled fully into place. Because growth offered after consequences isn't remorse. It's damage control. "I'm glad you're working on yourself," I said. "But you didn't make a mistake. You made a series of deliberate decisions. A mistake is forgetting to lock a door. What you did required coordination." I paused. "We're done. Please stop contacting me." I hung up and blocked the number. That same week, I finalized the buyout paperwork. The loan was approved. The signatures were clean. The business, my business, was officially mine alone. No shared authority, no shared secrets, no one who could compromise my livelihood because of personal choices. Standing in the empty office after everyone left, I felt something shift. Not relief, power. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't begged. I hadn't tried to control the narrative beyond sharing the truth. I had simply removed access. That realization reframed everything. The betrayal didn't take my agency. It revealed where I'd already had it. For the first time since that Friday afternoon, I wasn't reacting anymore. I was choosing. I chose silence over explanation. I chose boundaries over reconciliation. I chose forward motion over nostalgia. And once that choice was made, there was no temptation left to look back. Because the truth had already done its work. Once the decisions were final, the consequences unfolded quietly, but thoroughly. My ex-boyfriend didn't stop trying right away. Blocking one number only led to another. Emails followed. Long ones. Carefully structured. Filled with buzzwords he'd clearly picked up from therapy blogs and apology templates. He wrote about accountability, about growth, about how he finally understood what he'd done wrong. He outlined plans, therapy sessions, communication workshops, couples counseling he'd already researched. He promised transparency, patience, change. I read one email all the way through. Just one. Then I replied, "I appreciate that you're working on yourself, but you didn't make a mistake. You made a series of deliberate choices to lie, to deceive, to betray, and to use your sister as cover. A mistake is forgetting to turn off the stove. What you did was calculated. I wish you well, but we're done. Please stop contacting me." I didn't soften it. I didn't explain further. I didn't leave room for interpretation. He didn't reach out again after that. Small mercies. My former business partner's life unraveled faster than she expected. Her husband followed through with the divorce. Primary custody went to him. Child support arrangements consumed most of her income. The sale of her share in the business, at a loss, became permanent proof that some decisions can't be undone, only paid for. She took a job with a competitor. Lower pay, less authority, no ownership, no leverage. Karma didn't arrive dramatically. It arrived administratively. As for the business, ownership brought its own weight. Running everything solo was harder, longer days, tougher decisions, but it was cleaner. There were no silences to interpret, no trust to manage beyond what was earned. The employees noticed. One of them admitted, quietly, that morale had improved. Another said she felt less anxious coming to work. Productivity rose, not because I pushed harder, but because uncertainty had been removed. The friend group adjusted too. Lines were drawn without discussion. My ex was out. My former partner was out. Her husband stayed. Ironically, he and I ran into each other at a coffee shop a few weeks later. Pure accident. He stood behind me in line. "Hey," he said. "Hey." Silence stretched, not awkward, just honest. "I wanted to say, I'm sorry," he said finally. "And thank you. She kept telling me I was paranoid, that I was imagining things. You gave me proof." "I don't know if you should thank me," I said. "Both can be true," he replied. I nodded. We wished each other well and went our separate ways. At home, the apartment felt different. Not empty, but reset. I rearranged furniture, gave away things that no longer felt like mine, reclaimed space that had once held shared assumptions. Trust didn't return quickly. That wasn't the point. The point was that the truth had finished sorting things out, without my interference, without my constant involvement. All I'd done was stop protecting lies that weren't mine, and that turned out to be enough. Life didn't snap back into place after that. It softened, slowly, imperfectly, honestly. Running the business alone took more energy, but it also gave me something I hadn't realized I was missing: peace. Decisions were mine. Wins were mine. Mistakes, too. There was no second-guessing someone else's motives, no wondering what was happening behind my back. I kept going to therapy, not to dissect the past endlessly, but to make sure it didn't shape me into someone smaller. I talked about trust, how it doesn't mean blind faith, and boundaries don't mean bitterness. I learned that strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it looks like restraint. Sometimes it looks like choosing not to engage. People asked if I regretted making everything public. The honest answer? No. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I didn't manipulate. I shared the truth and stepped aside. If the truth detonated relationships, careers, and reputations, that wasn't because it was cruel. It was because it was accurate. I didn't lose 2.5 years. I gained clarity. I learned that betrayal doesn't always come wrapped in chaos. Sometimes it shows up wearing familiarity, borrowing trust, and assuming you'll protect it out of love or loyalty. I learned that protecting your peace sometimes means refusing to carry shame that isn't yours. And most importantly, I learned this. You don't need revenge. You don't need closure conversations. You don't need to be believed by everyone. You just need to stop lying for people who already proved they would lie to you. The truth has a quiet way of sorting things out, if you let it. As for me, I'm not bitter. I'm not hardened. I'm not rushing into anything new. I'm building, again. This time on foundations I've checked myself. And that feels like enough. If you've made it this far, thank you for staying with this story. I know stories like this can be uncomfortable because they force us to look at how easily trust can be misplaced and how quietly betrayal can happen when it comes from people we thought were safe. If you've ever been in a situation where the truth came out in a way you didn't expect, you're not alone. What I hope you take from this isn't anger or fear, but clarity. You're allowed to protect yourself. You're allowed to set boundaries without explaining them. And you're allowed to walk away without being the villain in someone else's version of the story. If this resonated with you, I'd really love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever experienced something similar, or had to choose between keeping the peace and telling the truth? If you found this story meaningful, consider liking the video. It helps more people find these conversations. And if you want more real-life stories about relationships, betrayal, family dynamics, and reclaiming your power, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourselves.